Alright folks, in this video we're breaking down Gilbert Burns versus Mike Malott using the Fighter Index, a system that evaluates fighters' skills to see who's more complete right now. Gilbert Burns brings elite grappling, high-level experience, and proven toughness against top competition. On the other side, Mike Malott is building momentum with a well-rounded skill set and real finishing ability. This matchup might seem straightforward at first glance, but once you dig into how their skills line up across striking, grappling, and defense, there are a lot of layers that start to show. We'll go through their strengths and vulnerabilities, break down the tail of the tape, and score their skills to figure out where each fighter actually holds an advantage, go over their paths to victory, and reveal their fighter index scores at the end of the video. Gilbert Burns is one of the most dangerous and well-rounded fighters in the welterweight division, built on elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and real finishing ability. On the ground, he's a constant submission threat, capable of ending a fight the moment he scores position. But what makes Burns especially dangerous is how much his striking has evolved. He carries real power in his hands and isn't afraid to engage, often dropping or hurting opponents in exchanges. He blends his grappling and striking well, using each to open opportunities for the other. Add in his experience against top-level competition, and Burns becomes a fighter who's dangerous in every phase and always a threat to finish. Burns is dangerous everywhere, but his aggressive style can create openings, especially against disciplined opponents. On the feet, he's willing to engage and throw with power, but that can lead to him absorbing clean shots in exchanges. Against longer, more technical strikers, he can struggle to consistently control distance and avoid damage. While his grappling is elite, getting into those positions isn't always easy against strong defensive wrestlers, and when he's forced to strike at range for extended periods, the fight can become less favorable. As fights wear on, the pace and physical toll can also start to impact his effectiveness, making moments of control harder to maintain. Mike Malott is a composed, well-rounded welterweight who blends technical striking with a dangerous submission game. On the feet, he's patient and efficient, picking his shots carefully and carrying real power when he commits. What stands out is how smoothly he transitions between phases. He can strike at range, close the distance into the clinch, and quickly turn those moments into grappling opportunities. On the ground, he's a legitimate finishing threat, capable of locking up submissions as soon as openings appear. As he's gained experience, his confidence and control have continued to grow, making him a fighter who can dictate where the fight takes place and capitalize when opportunities show themselves. Malott is a skilled and well-rounded fighter, like we just mentioned, but his game can show cracks when the fights become extended or physically demanding. While he's effective early, his pace and output can slow as fights go longer, especially against opponents who apply consistent pressure. On the feet, his measured approach can sometimes lead to lower volume, allowing opponents to edge rounds if they can stay active. Defensively, he can be hittable in exchanges when forced into faster-paced fights, and against experienced opponents who don't give openings easily, he may struggle to consistently impose his game. When Malott isn't able to control the tempo or find early success, the fight can become more competitive than it initially appears. Now we look at both fighters in the Fighter Index tail of the tape. Gilbert Burns brings a deeper resume into this matchup with a 22-9 overall record compared to Mike Malott at 13-2 and 1 draw. Inside the UFC, Burns also has a clear experience advantage, sitting at 15-9 in the promotion while Mike Malott is 6-1. Physically, Malott is the bigger fighter, standing 6'1" compared to Burns' 5'10" and has a 2-inch reach advantage. Stylistically, Burns fights out of the orthodox stance, while Malott brings a southpaw look, adding another layer to the striking dynamic. Coming into this fight, the momentum is heading in opposite directions. Gilbert's on a 4-fight skid, while Mike Malott rides a 3-fight winning streak. In knockout wins, Malott holds a slight edge 7 compared to Burns' 6, showing the power on his feet. In submissions, Burns leads clearly with a 9 to Malott's 4, highlighting his elite grappling threat. First round finishes are close, with Burns at 11 and Malott at 9, showing both fighters can end fights early. And when it comes to decisions, Burns has 7 wins while Malott has 2. Now it's time to break these fighters down using the Fighter Index scale. We break down each phase of the fight and score each skill to better understand the strengths and weaknesses of a fighter's game. All Fighter Index scores are based on a scale of 1 to 10. Scores are subjective and can change as a fighter evolves from fight to fight. Here's how the Fighter Index works. Each fighter is evaluated across 4 pillars, made up of 4 key skills. Every skill is scored on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 represents a non-functional ability and 10 represents a rare or generational skill. Everything in between reflects a fighter's level in that area. At the end of the video, these scores are combined to calculate the Fighter Index score. Pillar 1, Fight IQ and Athletic Tools. Both fighters bring solid foundations, but the differences start to show when you look at how they manage fights and handle pressure. In fight IQ, Gilbert Burns scores an 8 compared to Mike Malott's 7, reflecting Burns' experience and ability to make adjustments against high-level competition. Athletically, Burns again holds a slight edge with an 8 to Malott's 7, bringing a bit more explosiveness and physical readiness. In stamina, Burns scores a 7 while Malott sits at a 6, showing a more consistent ability to maintain pace as fights extend. And in resolve, the gap becomes more noticeable. Burns comes in at a 9 compared to Malott's 6, highlighting his proven toughness and ability to stay composed in difficult moments. With advantages across each category, particularly in experience and durability, this pillar favors Gilbert Burns. In Pillar 2, striking and stand-up defense, both fighters show real capability on the feet, but the differences come in how they handle exchanges in physical moments. In pure striking, they're even, both Gilbert Burns and Mike Malott scoring a 7, showing effective offense and the ability to land with impact. In the clinch, Burns holds a slight edge with an 8 compared to Malott's 7, bringing more physicality and control in close-range exchanges. Defensively, they're even again, each scoring a 6 in striking defense, showing they can avoid damage but are still hittable in open exchanges. And in durability, Burns separates himself with an 8 compared to Malott's 6, giving him a stronger ability to absorb shots and continue pressing forward when fights get physical. With the advantages in clinch control and durability, this pillar favors Gilbert Burns. In Pillar 3, grappling and control, this is where the matchup becomes more defined once the fight hits the mat. And if you know anything about Gilbert Burns, you know that he is a multiple-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion, and the dude is just scary on the ground. In wrestling, Gilbert Burns scores an 8 compared to Mike Malott's 6, showing a stronger ability to initiate and dictate grappling exchanges. That carries into takedown offense, where Burns again holds an 8 to Malott's 6, giving him a more reliable path to bring the fight to the ground. In top control, Burns maintains that same edge with an 8 compared to Malott's 6, reflecting his ability to secure position and keep opponents grounded once he gets there. And in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Burns separates even further with a 9 to Malott's 7, bringing an elite submission threat and the ability to capitalize quickly on small openings. With clear advantages across every category, especially in control and submission threat, this pillar strongly favors Gilbert Burns. In Pillar 4, defense, scrambles, and ground survival, both fighters show solid awareness, but the differences become clear in how they handle difficult positions. In takedown defense, Gilbert Burns scores a 7 compared to Mike Malott's 6, showing a slightly stronger ability to keep the fight where he wants it. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu defense, Burns extends that edge with an 8 to Malott's 6, reflecting a higher level of composure and safety when dealing with submission threats. Off the back, the gap becomes more noticeable. Burns scores an 8 compared to Malott's 5, making him far more active and dangerous even when he's not in control. And in scrambles, Burns again leads with an 8 to Malott's 6, highlighting his ability to navigate transitions and create reversals or escape bad positions. With advantages across every defensive layer, this pillar clearly favors Gilbert Burns. Now, when you take everything from the 4 pillars and you put it together, this is where the fight really starts to take shape. It's not just about who scores higher in each category, it's about how those skills show up when both fighters are trying to impose their game at the same time. Who's controlling the pace, who's forcing the exchanges, and which areas of the fight become most important. Because while the matchup might look competitive on paper, once you connect the patterns from each pillar, you start to get a much clearer picture of how this fight is likely to play out. In Pillar 1, Gilbert Burns holds the edge in experience, composure, and durability. He's the more proven fighter in high-level situations, and that shows in how he manages pressure and keeps himself in fights even when things get difficult. While Malott is capable and athletic, Burns is more reliable when the fights get extended or uncomfortable, which gives him more control over the pace as the fight develops. On the feet, both fighters are effective, but Burns has the advantage when exchanges get physical. His clinch work and durability allow him to stay in range and push through moments where Malott might prefer to reset. While Malott is clean and technical, Burns is more comfortable engaging and absorbing shots to create opportunities, especially in tighter exchanges. In grappling, this is where Burns really takes control. He's more consistent in initiating takedowns, more effective at maintaining position, and far more dangerous once the fight hits the ground. Malott has solid skills, but Burns brings a higher level of control and much more immediate submission threat in these exchanges. Defensively, Burns is also harder to deal with across the board. He's more secure in bad positions, he's more active when working off his back, and better in transitions when scrambles break out. Even when he's not in control, he's still creating threats, which makes him more difficult to manage in every phase of the fight. So this fight comes down to whether Burns can turn it into a grappling fight, because if he does, his control and submission threat become the difference. But if Malott keeps it upright and measured, he can make things much closer. Now we look at each fighter's path to victory based on what we learned from the 4 pillars. Gilbert Burns' path to victory centers on pressure, control, and leaning into his grappling advantage. Across multiple areas, he's the more proven and dangerous fighter when the fight transitions to the mat, so the key will be closing distance and forcing those exchanges. On the feet, Burns doesn't need to win clean striking battles. He needs to use his power and willingness to engage to back Malott up behind the black line against the fence and create opportunities and enter the clinch. From there, mixing in takedowns and establishing top control becomes critical. Once the fight hits the ground, Burns' control and submission threat give him the clear edge. If he can consistently bring the fight into grappling exchanges and make Malott work defensively, his experience, durability, and finishing ability can take over. Mike Malott's path to victory centers on discipline, distance control, and keeping the fight in striking range. He needs to use his size, his footwork, and southpaw stance to manage distance and avoid getting pulled into the clinch or grappling exchanges where Burns is most dangerous. On the feet, Malott should focus on clean, efficient striking, picking his shots, winning the lead foot battle, staying composed, and making Burns pay for aggressive entries. Just as important as takedown defense, if he can consistently deny Burns' attempts to bring the fight to the mat, he forces the fight into a more competitive striking battle. For Malott, the fight is about staying technical, controlling the pace, and avoiding the situations where Burns thrives. When the numbers are finalized, Gilbert Burns comes in with a 7.8 fighter index score compared to Mike Malott at 6.3. That gap reflects Burns' advantages across multiple phases, particularly in grappling, durability, and overall experience against high-level competition. While Malott is well-rounded and dangerous in his own right, especially on the feet, the scoring shows that Burns has the more reliable tools to control where the fight takes place and how it unfolds. On paper, the edge leans clearly towards Burns, but Malott's ability to manage distance and keep the fight standing still gives him a path to make things competitive. And that's the breakdown for Gilbert Burns versus Mike Malott using the fighter index. The numbers point towards Burns' control, experience, and grappling as the biggest edge, but Malott's striking and ability to manage distance give him a real path he can keep the fight in his world. Now I want to hear from you. Do you agree with these scores, or do you rate any of these skills differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell me why. Defend your picks. And if you enjoyed the breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around for the next Fighter Index analysis.